Over the years, Hololive has become so popular that people have made various fan games. I played HoloCure and made a video about it before, but for this video I decided to go through a bunch of them instead of focusing on just one fan game specifically. Though I will talk about HoloCure in this video if you haven't or don't want to watch the previous video that I did on that. It'll be the first game in the video, so if you want to skip that, you can do that more easily than if it's just buried in the video there, somewhere in the middle. But yeah, these are all fan games here in this video, and some are published by Holo Indie. Basically, these are the ones that caught my attention and I wanted to try out. And just so you know, the games are not in any particular order. So yeah, that's the theme of this video, and even for people who are not into VTubers or Hololive, some of these games might still be worth trying out since the majority of them are very well done and very free. So let's start with the first one I tried, HoloCure. I think this may be the most known fan game, or at least one of the best known. Apparently its success is also the reason why Cover went ahead with the Holo Indie idea. I did a video in the past which goes into more detail about the game, but basically HoloCure's gameplay is heavily inspired by Vampire Survivors and Magic Survival, as admitted in the game's Steam description there. The gameplay works like this. You control a VTuber, you run across the map with WASD, and aim with your mouse. Controllers are supported if you prefer that, and then it's a dual stick sort of affair. It's logical, you'll figure it out. You try to defeat hordes of enemies on various levels with several smaller bosses thrown around, and a final boss at the end. The enemies are the fan mascots because in the game's story, something has turned the fan bases against the VTubers. The game does start out a bit slow, but it gains momentum quickly until your screen is basically filled with stuff that may look almost unexplainable to people not familiar with Hololive lore and references. Defeated enemies drop XP, you collect them ideally, level up, and gain new attacks, power-ups, abilities, and or power up the ones you already have. The great thing about this game is that there's a lot of content and variety. There's almost 40 Hololive talents in here, I think, you can play as. They all have their own attack styles, special attacks, and all of that stuff. The different levels have their own enemies and environmental constraints. For example, the Hololive offices are very horizontal, with lots of places to get caught up on, so maybe not the easiest thing for beginners. Many things like abilities and things like that are references to all kinds of Hololive related things. There's also ways to combine abilities which create new and more powerful ones, and the combination of those things are references themselves. There's also a farming thing, which I've not looked at really, to be honest. The coins that you earn also allow you to enhance various aspects of the characters, but I think a more accurate way of putting it is you can change the game balance to your liking, so you can make things easier for yourself or more difficult depending on what you want to do. So I think that's very interesting. There's more info in the full video I did on HoloCure, so check that out if you're interested. It would be easy to talk about this game too much in this video, but we're trying to get through several here, so yeah, let's keep going and move on to another game. Idol Showdown. This is a good old-fashioned 2D fighting game. I like fighting games quite a bit. I'm very bad at them, not that that stops me from playing them. I'm sure Idol Showdown draws inspiration from several different fighting games, but to me it feels immediately similar to The King of Fighters. I played KOF 13 a lot, and just the general feel of moving around and things like that in Idol Showdown reminds me of it, so personally I think that's already a good start. You've got light, medium, and heavy attacks. In addition, you can also crouch and jump. Going backwards will also guard. There's a button for specials. They vary depending on, the VTuber. It's pretty logical when it comes to controls. What I like is how the game manages to incorporate tag team elements into the gameplay. The game calls these collabs. Collabs. Anyways, on the character selection screen, you can select a collab partner. If your meters are high enough, they can perform one of two different abilities. There's a decent amount of playable talents. Even Coco makes an appearance, which is cool. There are lots of references in the animations, attacks, specials, and all those things that make the game extra fun for Hololive fans. There's the classic arcade mode with various difficulty levels. You can take a different path, but between fights there in order to fight other characters. Strangely, this menu is in 3D, which looks a bit weird since that's the only 3D bit in the game. There's also a game mode called Virtual Frontier. It's sort of like survival in a way, except you go from fight to fight and see how long you can last rather than it just being an endless fight with new opponents. But actually the main difference here is that you get various items that give you buffs or heal you. There's also several things you can do between fights, like buy items or rest to gain or regain health rather. It's a very interesting game mode. Online play exists, though I didn't try that. I'm terrible at these games, so I fear how I would go up against somebody else. There is a tutorial and training mode, which is helpful. Overall, it just feels like a fully featured fighting game. It doesn't feel like a novelty thing. Combine that with the well-done references, and you've got yourself one of the best Hololive games, paid or not. HoloParade. This one wasn't free. With the Fubuki swimsuit and BGM DLC, it was still under $7 Canadian, so still very affordable, I think. I didn't think I'd like this one too much from the footage I've seen, but it turned out to be way more enjoyable when actually playing it. This is a 2D tower defense game. Basically, your side is on the right, the enemy's on the other side there on the left. The side that reaches the opposite end first and completely depletes their enemy's base HP wins. So yeah, try to do that. There's a counter that goes up. It's called motivation. Each unit uses up a certain amount of motivation. The units can be anything from mascots to actual Hololive members, tanks, attack-based ones, cheap cannon fodder, just, to name a few things there. You can upgrade units if you want. A gacha system exists if you want to get new units. That requires these blue ticket things that you earn as you do missions and stuff. You can always choose between 2 units. If you get something you already have, it'll just level that unit up. Most are going to be mascots, but if you're lucky, you can get Hololive members. In terms of the selection of Hololive members, it's these specific gens: Gen 0, Gen 3, Gamers, Gen 5, and Hololive EN Myth. The game is decently deep in terms of gameplay mechanics. There's lots to consider when creating your formations. Luckily, there are 8 formations you can save and switch between. It's also a good idea to pair certain units with certain talents, as they'll provide some positive effects. I'll say that I'm not a huge fan of the animations. It doesn't matter really with the small mascotty looking things, but once you have, holomems walking around, they look all weird and stiff and unrealistic, but you know what? Once you play, you don't really think about it, so it's alright. But occasionally you'll just look at the graphics and be like, oh, okay, it's not amazing, but whatever. There's other fun stuff like mini games that allow you to earn more tickets. Overall, it's got pretty deep mechanics, which are fun. And it's also fun trying to collect all the different talents and units. I think that's also a good motivation to keep playing. So yeah, definitely way better than it looks. Hololive Suika game. This is a browser game modeled after the Suika game that many Hololive YouTubers have been playing, except with the fruits changed to members of Hololive. If you don't know how this type of game works, it's pretty simple. There's several sized fruits, or in this case, heads. You drop them from the top. When 2 of the same type/size come into contact, they combine and become the next step bigger. If you reach the top, the game ends, kind of like Tetris. Obviously, a higher score is better, so yeah. Pretty simple and decently fun. Kanata is the smallest, and then goes Matsuri, Fubuki, Aqua, Okayu, Miko, Lami, Nene, Chloe, Marine, and Noelle. I think it's pretty self-explanatory when it comes to how the sizes correspond to which holomem. If you've played the actual Suika game, you'll know or notice that not only does the Hololive fan version look a bit more plain and less refined, it feels that way too. You'll notice that the pieces, let's call them, don't bounce as much. Like there's different physics going on. The weighting feels different. Plus, obviously, the graphics are not as good in the fan game there. The Hololive version is just a little bit plain, or I don't know if rough is the right word, but I think you know what I mean. The original game is clearly the better game, but hey, Hololive Suika game is still fun, and since it's free, you can just try it out for yourself. Hololive Treasure Mountain. After the Suika game thing, this is the most logical game to follow up with. This game also isn't free, so yeah, just so you know. Hololive Treasure Mountain is basically a 3-dimensional interpretation of Suika game, except you have to throw or lob the heads into a bowl-shaped geological feature. Is this technically a mountain? The game's name suggests so, but I have my doubts. But obviously, it's a reference to Marine being a pirate and also her song, Treasure Box. The aim here is to get the the highest score possible, but there's some interesting things going on here. The more chains you connect, the more characters you unlock. Some characters have different requirements. The order, or the hierarchy of which heads are the smallest to biggest, is actually customizable. So yeah, that's kind of cool. You can create your own presets. There's a story, apparently. In the beginning, there's a movie that plays, which you can rewatch if you skipped it or something. I played the game for the first time like around midnight after being awake for a very long time. To be honest, I just felt like I was observing an alien trying to communicate with me, but without success. I just didn't understand anything. I don't know. My mind was just frazzled, but supposedly there's a storyline. Not that it's really important to gameplay. The main thing is throw head and bowl. Two same heads make bigger heads. Head fall in water, game over. You can change the trajectory of your throw and rotate around the playing field. The heads look like they're bouncy, but in reality they stay in place pretty well, especially at the edges. You'll notice that the game will try and keep the heads in play, so if you're complaining about the game being difficult, it's already helping you, so you've got no one else to blame but yourself. Hololive Treasure Island is also pretty noisy, which is a strange thing to complain about in the game. The character heads have voice lines, and Sensho keeps saying stuff, so you just get a soundscape of holomems talking. It can sound pretty chaotic, and then on top of that, you'll hear Subaru go, "Juba, juba, juba," or "Hajimayo, Hajimayo," all the time. And it's like, oh, Jesus, what a noisy game. It's kind of funny, though. For some reason, she's just louder than everyone else. So I guess you could say it's pretty realistic in that regard. Overall, pretty fun. After so many good free games, it does feel strange that this game is the one that actually costs money. But yeah, that's how it is. Wow, 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 Korone Box. Now, that's a name. This is a free PC game. As you can imagine, this game features Korone. The entire thing is a reference to how Korone often reacts to various weapons she gets and uses in games that she plays. It's a retro-style top-down shooter. You control Korone with WASD in terms of direction, while aiming is performed with the mouse, kind of like in HoloCure. It's referred to as a twin-stick shooter, so you can probably imagine how the controls transpose onto a controller. The objective is pretty simple. You try to get to a box, which will be located randomly on the map somewhere. Collecting it will give you a random weapon. It doesn't matter how many enemies you defeat, the aim is to get the highest score possible, which is how many boxes you manage to collect. I say random location, but the boxes seem to spawn in preset areas, kinda. There's a bit of variation, but you'll often be like, oh yeah, the boxes have been here before, that sort of thing. And there's certain places where boxes will never show up. The more boxes you collect, the more weapons you unlock. There's various enemies that fans should recognize, like Konosuke's, that dog character I can't remember the name of, and others there. They emerge from these purple portals, so don't just blindly run over them, because even though they blink, you might sometimes time it incorrectly and then get hit. All the enemies have different attacks and have different hit points. Every 12 boxes, you're faced with a boss. A boss. A lot of these are actually ones that Korone designed herself several years ago. You can search up Korone Draws Monsters and you'll find several videos. It does seem that the bosses are random, like the order that they show up in. I haven't been able to find out if there's a pattern or not. It's a bit annoying when you get a weapon you don't really like, though. For example, I'm not a huge fan of the frisbee, but stuff like the chainsaw and bonk hammer are actually pretty good because they work against projectiles. The chainsaw eliminates them and the hammer redirects them. But the point is that you can hit them so that they don't hit you. The hardest part of the game is that if you get hit, you die, no matter what. It doesn't matter if it's a projectile or running into an enemy. I don't mind this, to be honest. It's one of those games that you just have to play and play to get better at. Another part of the fun is the fact that the weapons are random, even though you may get stuff you don't like. But it's fun trying to just get used to it, I guess. There's various weapons like a rocket launcher, revolver, dual guns, and also more comical stuff like Mio shooting a laser. Why not? Often weapons will have two ways of shooting, like the dual gun can shoot 2 bullets out front in a sort of V spread, or both front and back. The shotgun also you can control if the spread is, just more directed or wide. There's only 3 stages, with each having a normal and hard mode. Hard mode is basically the same as normal, but enemies seem to shoot more projectiles, and I think there's also more of them. I think the best and easiest map is the second one. There's usually lots of places to run to, and the trees also allow you to block various attacks from bosses. The third map is the hardest because you can get boxed in pretty easily. Overall, pretty fun. I think there is a clear point where difficulty goes up. It took a while for me to defeat the second boss, for example, and judging by the achievements on Steam, there's a clear point where people just gave up. It's quite fun though. It could be, it could use a bit more content, like more stages or maybe different types of enemies. But still, I think this is one of the best Hololive games I've played. Holo Break or Holo X Break, I can't remember how it's pronounced. These games, sometimes the X is pronounced, sometimes it isn't. This is made by the same developer as HoloCure, and you'll notice various similarities in terms of assets, like the coins and some of the collectible power-ups. But it's quite a different game. Holo Break is a 2D beat-em-up. Think of Final Fight or Streets of Rage. I've never been good at 2D beat-em-ups for some reason. Despite that, I find this game pretty enjoyable. The story is that okay, Google Docs autocorrected Yago to Yahoo. But yeah, the story is that Yago goes missing, and it seems that Holo X, which is the name of Gen 6, may be behind it as they announce their plan for world domination. You control members of Gen 5 who try and defeat Holo X and get Yago back. The game flow works kind of like this. You first select a character, they have different abilities, attacks, and stats. I found Nene to be quite good since she can heal. You run along the level and fight enemies. The stage kind of locks in as waves of enemies appear. You can attack and dodge. Enemies drop coins, which you can use to upgrade and buy things between stages. Each wave of enemies ends with you getting a crate that has coins and some items that you can use or equip. You'll also find objects in the level there that you can use as weapons. They break after several hits. At the end of the level, you will face one member of Holo X in a boss fight. The game can be a bit hard because if you die, you go back to the beginning of the level, not the boss fight. So that can be a bit frustrating. But I do like that the game mimics the difficulty of those types of games, because that's like a normal thing you would find in something like Streets of Rage or something like that. I can't remember. It's been a while since I've played those kind of games. There are many references thrown around. The hordes of enemies are fan base / mascot characters of Holo X. The backgrounds will have other holomems running around, like Hachama's buried in the sand at the beach. There's Okakoro on the sidewalk, and also Matsuri running with a piece of toast in her mouth. Also, there are other noteworthy details, like the travel agency being a reference to Azuki being good at GeoGuessr. Obviously, the items you collect are references as well. Overall, it's quite fun to see what you can find when playing the game. Delivering Hope. This is a browser and Android game featuring Iris. It feels like this is inspired by one or more mobile games. Basically, you throw / launch Iris and try to get as far as possible. First, you set the angle and strength, or whatever way around it is again, and then off you go. There's various obstacles and beneficial things strewn around your path. Most of the other EN members will give you some sort of boost. They can also change your angle depending on who's doing the throwing, I guess. You also have boosts that allow you to get over obstacles. The most dangerous of those being Bei. She's basically like hitting a wall, so that's best avoided. Meatballs slow you down. I forgot what Tofu does again. And bananas make you floaty. There's more depth here than you'd first expect, to be honest. There's also customizable options. Admittedly, I haven't played this one at length. It's something you can get really into, but for me, it's the sort of thing I'll play it for like 15 minutes or something. So yeah, there it is. Several notable Hololive fan games. I'm not going to rank them, but I will say that there's 2 categories we could put these games in, though there may be some disagreements as to which games go where in some cases. But basically, they're novelty games and then like proper good games that have some depth to them. So something like Suika game is more of a novelty, while something like HoloCure, Idol Showdown, Korone Box, HoloParade, those games offer content you can play for a while because there's substance there. It's kind of amazing that most of the really good Hololive fan games are free, so it's not like there's much of a barrier there. It's not like you're going to waste money in most cases. Just pick something you think looks fun, chances are it's free, and give it a go. Let me know in the comments what you think about these games if you've played them, and if there are other games you've played that aren't mentioned in the video but think are worth looking at. I'd love to know what they are. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you again in the next video.